Module 5, we begin talking about phonological awareness. I want you to remember phonological awareness goes back to that sequence that was presented in Module 1 and 2. We do need to be methodical. Remember what we're doing wrong with teaching reading. And we know one thing that we are doing wrong is that we are not methodical in how we teach phonological awareness. Again, we come down to knowing each child, right? And developmentally appropriate practices. So keep that in mind as we talk today about some of these questions you all had. So manipulating sounds. You guys talked about, well, how do you take rhyme and make it fun? And how do you manipulate sounds and make it fun? And I like that. I'm appreciative that you guys are thinking about playful learning. I want you to understand that this is not going to happen in random, spontaneous play. Not going to teach phonemic awareness during spontaneous play. They need intentional instruction, right? But it doesn't have to be long, right? But we can offer lots of playful learning activities. And these are games, whether it's memory games and you're matching pictures that rhyme like cat and hat and dog and log. That's playful learning. And you're going to teach the rhyming and the children will understand it and they will have fun and they're going to develop social skills from playing the game. They're developing memory skills with the game. Again, different memory skills than memorizing flashcards. It's fun. It's playful. I'm going to say that word a lot. Activities, routines, silly songs. Have you ever noticed that children's songs rhyme? Guys, that's not by accident. That is intentional. I have linked you to 4 sites that I want you to explore that will give you ideas about games to play, centers to have during center time, activities that you could do as a whole group. If you're doing table time, offering that, and routines that encourage play with rhymes, syllable counting, all these kinds of things. Somebody said, well, what is best? It's not best. There is not one best solution, whether it's poetry or rhyme or tongue twisters or picture books. They all have value. It's about the quality of the language. It's about the developmentally appropriate practice, the way you are engaging the child in the experience. If it's a worksheet and they're cutting out pictures and gluing them down on a chart, that's not meaningful. That's not playful. That's a worksheet. Playing memory with rhyming cards, that's playful. Playing Go Fish, Old Maid, simple card games you can take and make into so many different kinds of skills, and it's a playful learning opportunity. So it's not about one being better than the other. It's about having strong balance and variety. So do you use poetry? How could you integrate children's poetry into your work on a regular basis? Do you use tongue twisters? How could you bring that in? Maybe you're going to have a poem every week. And maybe on Fridays, it's going to be Tongue Twister Friday or Tongue Twister Tuesday. Ooh, maybe you're going to have a day that's alliteration. That doesn't matter so much to the children as much as it reminds you to regularly use these things. Do you have silly phrases and sayings? Do you play with words with children? My grandma did. My grandma has been dead for 18 years maybe. I'll tell you a story. It's not very long. Toodle-lump, toodle-lump. Now it's all gone. Beth Boteth, Tialagoteth, T-legged, toe-legged, bow-legged Beth. Those were things she said. Silly phrases. And you're like, Beth, that doesn't mean anything. It means I can play with words. It means I hear sound differences. It means I can change the beginning and ending sounds. It's like I like to eat apples and bananas. I like to ate apples and bananas. I'm not sitting here saying, Beth, that's a short A. Now it's short E. Now it's short I. I'm playing with sounds. And when I can play with sounds, then when I learn the letters and later on I start dealing with letter patterns, I can manipulate those and see the patterns in words. And that's what we're going for. So the routines are almost more for us than they are for the children, because they will help us diversify our experiences that we're giving the children. Again, dual language learners have come up. Great questions. I really appreciate how much you guys are thinking about this information and connecting it to the children you work with. The quickest answer here is no. You won't confuse your children by using nonsense words when you are working with dual language children. You can just say, that's a silly word. They're learning to play with sounds. They're learning to manipulate sounds. That's the point. And you're doing it in a way that's playful and fun, happy. I do connect you to 2 articles. It gets a lot more complex than what I just said because, of course, remember my previous video, there are no absolutes. And so it's not always that simple. And you need to be aware of that. But when you don't know, go ask those reading teachers in your school districts. They will be so thrilled. If you called your elementary school principal in town and you said, could I talk to your reading teacher? I got a couple questions about a kid. Guys, they will love it. They will welcome you with open arms. So don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to ask me as you're taking classes or if I'm observing you in your practicum. Ask me. I'm happy to go deeper when you need to go deeper. So these 2 articles are 2 good sources for those of you with dual language learners. But I can't emphasize enough, like I did in Module 4 with those answers to your questions. What we are doing when we are doing it best is what each and every child needs. We should have visual cues in our classrooms for every child. We should be having playful learning opportunities for every child. Is it okay to work on identifying letters and their sounds in preschool? In chapter 5, the book was leaning more towards the sounds first before the letters, but in chapter 4, we learned about alphabet books to help with letter sound knowledge. So, and again, good question. And I actually put this question out there exactly how it was asked because I felt like, yes, this is a good question. And I actually went back to the book last night and reread it. And so this is what I wanted to point out. In the book, it says, Read Aloud provides a way to build letter sound knowledge. You can do this by using any kind of reading material, but alphabet books work best. Alphabet books are widely available and many of them are engaging and or interesting, so they meet dual purposes of entertaining and building alphabet knowledge. We are not talking about sitting there and expecting children to know their letters after you read an alphabet book. This is talking about exposure. You are exposing children to the idea of letters. You are not, I will repeat it, you are not teaching letter identification. You absolutely should not sit there after reading the book and say, what letter is this? What letter is this? What letter is this? No, because why? That's skill and drill. Skill and drill does not work. It is ineffective. Yes, kids will eventually learn. No, it is not quality learning. Period. It doesn't have meaning to the kids yet. But that doesn't mean you can't expose them. That C is for Caroline and W is for William and S is for sunflower and T is for turkey. That's exposure. I actually have to say, like, this is one of those points professionally where I don't like alphabet books for read alouds because they're hard to use and they can be very overwhelming for the teacher and for the child. I just don't think they're easy to use. The book thinks different, argues differently, and they make a really good point to it, right? But what they're talking about is exposure. And so then they give tips, and they gave 5 tips. And they explain them well. Like, explain that this is the letter and this is what word starts with that letter. Like, so they make that connection that S is for sunflower and B is for boy, you know, whatever it is in the book. Yes, attend to the sounds. So B is for boy. S is for snake. So you're going to emphasize that sound as well. That's appropriate when you're reading it, to emphasize that. But I'm not skill and drilling. Number 3, help children relate the new to the known. Oh, look, W is for wagon, just like William is for W is for William. William, wagon. Say those. William, wagon. Our mouth does the same thing at the beginning of that letter. That's what they're talking about. They're talking about connecting what's in the book to what the children know, emphasizing that sound. It's the exposure. Have the children make their own alphabet books. Again, they're getting this idea that words are made up with letters and letters have different sounds and they look differently. That's a big idea. That's the big idea we want preschoolers to understand. Because once they understand that and their brain develops a little bit more, when their brain is ready, they will learn their letters fast. It will not be a multi-year process, which is what we do to children. We make it way harder on them than it should be. I have a mistype. Treat alphabet books as more than just vehicles for alphabet learning. And that's my favorite one. That's the takeaway here. They say after that, it should be a shame, and let's face it, a bore, to overlook all of that and just focus on letters and sounds. As a rule of thumb, attending to 2 or 3 aspects of the book, such as the story or the illustrations and the alphabet when reading it. Or read it multiple times over a few days, concentrating on one aspect each time. That way children get a lot of different things out of the book. So go read those tips again and don't read things with tunnel vision. Step back and put it into context of what we know about brain development, what we know about DAP. DAP. Don't leave home without it, guys. Do not lose your brain. Your brain knows developmentally appropriate practices. I make that a point at Allen, and I will call you out on it when you are not addressing it. And those are tough conversations to have. But we have to recognize individual development, developmental milestones, which is your group, and we have to recognize culture and experiences and opportunities that children have had, their context for learning. We have to recognize all 3 of those and use those when we work with our children, because they're all similar, but they're all different, and we know that. Great questions this time. I get super excited as I read your questions. I'm sorry it took me so long to get these videos up. I will give more tomorrow.